really did mean well, but what was supposed to force them to declare their earnings and confess their conflicts of interest has instead created a market where corruption is brokered through third parties. The standard for identifying these sorts of pay-to-play schemes has long been to look for the straight line, the quid pro quo, like frozen cash in a congressman's freezer. Today's corruption is rarely this simple. The gun no longer smokes. Instead, we are left with a question. How do you prevent this when the quid happens in broad daylight, almost untraceable to the quo that lies behind shell companies, international banking secrets, the children of politicians, cronies, foreign business partners, and various charitable organizations set up by the politicians themselves? The sale of Uranium One to a Russian government-controlled company called Rosatom is that kind of story. Our 2015 book, Clinton Cash, The Untold Story of How and Why Foreign Governments and Businesses Helped Make Bill and Hillary Rich, focused on the connections between the people who wanted that sale to happen and the Clinton Foundation, the multi-billion-dollar charitable organization set up by the former president and his wife. Hillary Clinton, while Secretary of State, was in a position to make sure that it did. Uranium One and its connections to the Clintons comprised just 2 chapters of that book, one example of many that showed how the Clintons used the power of their office and the cover of their philanthropy to enrich themselves and their friends through many different pay-to-play schemes. Documenting these connections took us to Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, Canada, and other places. Our team, and especially Seamus Bruner, tracked the money trail of massive contributions to the Clintons and connected them to the players and the timeline of the Uranium One deal. All of it was distilled into 36 pages of Clinton Cash. Seamus found more information than we could use in that book. His gut told him that there was a lot more going on, enough for a whole book. I was skeptical at first, but he was right. And the complex, interconnected web of interests, strategic mistakes, and coincidences is all laid out in detail here for the first time. As you will see, the Uranium One story sprawls across multiple U.S. administrations and reaches the highest levels of the Kremlin, where it becomes a key part of the long-held ambition of Russian President Vladimir Putin to corner the world market for atomic energy. This book tells, as the late radio commentator Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story. The sale of Uranium One to Rosatom in 2010 and finalized in 2013 was a bad deal for U.S. national security and should never have been approved. What was said at the time in defense of the deal has been proven not to be true, and most of what its critics feared has come to pass. Yet the Washington Post recently described this criticism as debunked, despite having published its own news stories confirming what we uncovered back in 2015. Something is amiss. The best that we as independent journalists can do with these kinds of stories is to find and expose the patterns that strongly suggest corruption. Reporters at mainstream media outlets apply this standard routinely to their political coverage of everything from gun control bills to health care by noting how the timing of campaign contributions received by politicians matches up with those decisions. But for this story, with its cast of characters in Russia, Ukraine, Europe, and the United States, these same media outlets want to move the goalposts. After the Uranium One story emerged, we called for official investigations, ones armed with subpoena power and the ability to gather information we could not hope to get ourselves. We were optimistic when, in 2017, then Attorney General Jeff Sessions asked John Huber, the U.S. Attorney in Utah, to look into concerns that the FBI had not fully pursued cases of possible corruption when the U.S. government decided not to block the sale of Uranium One. Huber's investigation, finally released in 2020, was a disappointment, as it was simply a review of the FBI's earlier insufficient efforts. His team called no witness.